And the other one we did last week on Monday on this very special setting in Evnei Eitan in the Golan. The first week we sort of went over the chapters and we saw what was going on there. We asked amazing questions. You guys, Masha, learned it very well. And on Monday we sort of dived into the depth of Yonah and Chazal. That's sort of what we saw. Where is Yonah? What do we know about Yonah from beforehand? And there we checked pretty much 5 different concepts or 5 different attributes, I would say, that we saw of Yonah that come out of the one place he's mentioned in the Tanakh and the other places he's referenced by Chazal in the Tanakh. We saw he has something inherently kashur to Eliyahu Hanavi. Right, he's the child of Eliyahu. He has life stories that are domain, that are similar to Eliyahu and Navi, both in leaving Eretz Yisrael one way, leaving Eretz Yisrael the other way, and his kanaut. Right, we said there is someone who's willing to die. Eliyahu is willing to die. He wants to. He runs away. He wants to die. Yonah wants to die. There's something connected to Eliyahu that we're going to have to flush out a little more. We also saw that Yonah loves Am Yisrael. Loves Am Yisrael. We saw that in his in twofold. One was
he ran away.
Well, we're going to see that in a second.
Oh, we're not there yet. What are we up to?
Were you on the Tiyul?
I was on the Tiyul, but we only did Meforshim.
Were you in the Shiur on the Tiyul?
Yeah.
Okay, so these are the things I'm going over. The things we said.
We haven't had a Shiur.
You missed the Shiur.
Was it a full Shiur?
You didn't miss anything.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty much. If you had known, you would have come.
I knew there was you.
So we saw how he brings. He's the only place he's mentioned in the Tanakh is his prophecy to Yisrael that they are going to get more shetach, get more territory, even though the time he gave that prophecy, Am Yisrael was not doing Ritzon Hashem, Yerovam Hasheni. Even so, he's the one who's he gives the prophecy that we're supposed to get grander and greater. We saw that's an interesting point. And then we saw 2 other aspects that we went into a little deeper, which Shevet he is from. We saw there were 2 Shvatim that he comes from, the Machloket, and then an idea that maybe his mother and father are from different Shvatim. But the Shvatim of Asher and Zvulun are 2 major Shvatim in Yonah's background. And we talked a little bit about what each Shevet sort of fleshes out. Asher, the bounty and the plenty and the blessed material, the material matzav of Am Yisrael, situation of Am Yisrael. While Zvulun is the going out to the ships that go out to the Goyim and meet the Goyim, and at the end of the day bring the Goyim back to Har Hashem, right? He brings them back to the mountains, to the Beit HaMikdash. In other words, the bravery and the courage to go out and meet the Goyim and bring them back, bring them to Yisachar, to turn it into Torah. We saw Yonah. This is Yonah. These are all aspects of Yonah that we saw. Kadima. Let's jump into Perek Aleph. Okay, we're hopefully going to finish all of Perek Aleph today. There's many levels to talk about Perek Aleph. Yeah, for sure. But I'm going to just read it again. We're going to read Perek Aleph so that we're all grounded, so that when we talk about it, we'll be able to go through it quickly. I'm going to read it. Please follow. Mamash. Please follow. It's really important because I'm going to be referencing things all the time, okay, in the chapter that I assume you'll know well enough. People who don't understand the Hebrew at all are welcome to sort of follow in English as we go through. But if you can, it's obviously better to follow in the Hebrew and the little pieces that you don't understand to go on. I'll translate it not word by word as I go. Vayidvar Adonai el Yonah ben Amitai lemor. Kum lech el Ninveh ha'ir hagdola ukra elea ki alta ra'atam lefanai. Arise and go to Ninveh, the big city, the great city, and call to it because their evil has risen before me. Vayakom Yonah livroach Tarshisha milfnei Adonai. Vayered Yafo vayimza oniya ba Tarshish vayiten schara. Vayered ba lavo imahem Tarshisha milifnei Adonai. So Yonah gets up. But instead of getting up and doing what Hashem says, he gets up to run away, and he runs away. He wants to go to Tarshish. We have to talk where that is and what that is. From before Hashem.
That's in Turkey, right?
Tunisia. It's in Tunisia.
It's a machloket. Let's go on. Vayered, one of the opinions is Tunisa. It really says Tunisa, right? Vayered Yafo. So he goes down to Yafo, the port city of Yafo. V'imsa uniyan. He finds a boat, Tarshish, that has come from Tarshish. And he gives its salary, he gives its money. And he goes down to travel with them to Tarshish, milifnei Hashem. Again, that between milifnei Hashem, from before Hashem. V'Adonai itil ruach gdola el hayam, v'isar gadol bayam, v'oniach ishva lishaver. Hashem sends a great wind on the water and on the sea, and there is a great storm, and the ship seemingly is going to break. ויראו המלאכים ויזעקו איש אלוהיו ויטילו את הכלים אשר באונייה על הים להקל מעליהם ויונה ירד אל ירכתי הספינה וישכב וירדם. So everyone, the sailors, malachim, the sailors are very frightened and they cry each to his God and they throw their extra vessels into the ocean to make it easier, to make it lighter. And Yonah goes down to the bottom of the ship and he lays down and goes to sleep. ויקרב אליו רב החובל ויאמר לו מה לך נרדם? קום קרא אל אלוהיך אולי יתעשת אלוהים לנו ולא נאבד. The captain comes to him and says, what are you doing sleeping? Get up, call to your God. Maybe God will change his mind and we won't be lost. ויאמרו איש אל רעהו לכונו להפיל הגורלות ונדעה בשל למי הרעה הזאת לנו ויפילו גורלות ויפול הגורל על יונה. So they say to the sailors, say to each other, let's go, let's throw lots and see whose fault this is to us. And they do the lots, and it comes out on Yonah. Tell us, please, whose fault this is. What is your job? Where do you come from? What's your land? And what nation are you from? He said to them, I am in Ivri. ואת אדוני אלוהי השמיים אני ירא אשר עשה את הים ואת היבשה. And Hashem, the God of heaven, I fear who made the sea and the land. ויראו אנשים יראה גדולה. And then the people fear a great fear. ויאמרו אליו מה זאת עשית? What did you do? כי ידעו אנשים כי מפני אדוני הוא בורח כי הגיד להם. They know the people know that he ran away from Hashem because he told them. ויאמרו אליו מה נעשה לך וישתוק הים מעלינו. What do we do to you so that the water stops, the ocean calms down? כי הים הולך וסוער, because it's getting worse and worse, it's getting more and more stormy. ויאמר עליהם שאוני ותילוני אל הים, raise me up and throw me into the sea, וישתוק הים מעליכם, and then it will be quiet. כי יודע אני כי בשלי השר הגדול הזה לכם, because I know it is because of me, or my fault, or my responsibility that this great storm is upon you. ויחתרו אנשים להשיב על היבשה ולא יכולו, and they try to row back to the land, but they can't. כי הים הולך וסוער אליהם, because the water is getting stormier and stormier. ויקראו אל אדוני, they call to Hashem, ויאמרו, אנא אדוני, please Hashem, notice שם השם. אל נא נאבדה בנפש האיש הזה. ואל תיתן עלינו דם נקי. Please don't destroy us because of this one man. And don't also put his blood on us. Don't give us clean blood on us. כי אתה אדוני כאשר חפצת עשית. Because you are God, as you will, you do. וישאו את יונה והטילו אל הים. ועמוד הים נזער פה. They take Yonah and they throw him into the water and the storm stops. ויראו אנשים יראה גדולה את אדוני. ויזבחו זבח לאדוני וידרו דברים. The people fear a great fear of Hashem. And they bring a zevach and they bring their vows. And they make vows. So that's Perek Aleph. We know it, we saw it, or we have it. I wanna do one more akdama before we go on. Sefer Yonah, very important to understand, is built in two halves. Clearly two halves. Okay? If you guys look at Perek Aleph, it started Vayidvar Adonai el Yonah b'nei Amitai v'nemor kum lech el ninveh. Look at Perek Gimel, Vayidvar Adonai el Yonah shenit lemor kum lech el ninveh. In other words, we have, as we do in movies, we have take one and take two. Okay, take one, it doesn't work, everything's work, doesn't work. Let's say there, okay, stop everything. Take two. Let's do this again. Let's do it again. And they start. And it's very clear. In other words, in chapter 1, we have a story of Yonah and the Goyim. I'm just saying in general, just to see how the two halves fit very well. Perek Aleph is Yonah and the Goyim. In Perek Gimel, it's Yonah and Shei Ninveh, and the people of Ninveh, and here it's the Yonah and the sailors, who play a remarkably long amount of a lot. They're very present in chapter 1, which seems to have no meaning whatsoever. An interesting question that we'll go into in a minute is, why do we know so much about these sailors? There's a lot of talking about the sailors in Perek Aleph. We don't. That's so yafet. So that's the Kabbalah. In other words, Yonah is affecting the sailors just as he's going to affect the Anshe Ninveh in Perek Gimel. What happens in Perek Daled? Perek Daled begins by us. He gets swallowed up by them. Then Pasuk Bet Vayitpalel Yonah Adonai. Yonah davens to Hashem, while Perek Daled starts Vayitpalel Adonai. It's very clear that the second chapter, the first chapter is a story per se chapter. Yonah and his relationship with the Goyim he's in relationship with. Perek Bet and Perek Daled is Yonah and Hashem. Now, there's a story, and on the layer of the story, there's Yonah's discussion, prayer, talking with Hashem, and Hashem talking to Yonah. Okay, that's sort of what happened. Even though in chapter 2 he doesn't talk to Yonah, he just Yonah davens to him. But there's some kind of thing going on. The two chapters, the two halves are ligamri makbil. All right, so these are they're parallel, and we'll have to keep that in mind as we go through the book. Okay, but we have to understand there are two halves that really fit one another. Beseda. That was Akdama. Let's dive into our parshanut of Yonah. We're going to follow our what we've been doing in most of our classes: Shvila Zahav, Rashi, Radak, Malbim, as following the parshanut. So there are pages here everyone can have. We're going to try to do this relatively quickly. We're going to do this in half an hour. It never works, but we're going to try anyway.
Half an hour.
Half an hour to get through the Parshanim, just to see the Parshanim, and then we're going to go on to more. Okay? The commentaries we want to go through as quickly as we can. So I have, again, it's on the page here. I chose which ones I want to bring from the commentaries. They didn't bring them all, even though I brought quite a bit of them. And we'll see how they relate to different points. One of the major questions here, there's actually two major questions here in the story. Okay, in the storyline itself, what in the world is he thinking? Yonah, right? That's sort of the basic question here. What in the world is he thinking? To run away from God. It doesn't work. David HaMelech says, Ana mipanecha evrach. There's no place to run. I run here, I run there. You're always there. And as anyone, a prophet, Yonah is a prophet. You have to understand, to be a prophet, you have to be at a certain spiritual level. It's not any one of us who's getting this prophecy. The prophet is a huge, you know what he was doing. So what's he doing? What's he doing for running away from Hashem? What does he think he's doing? The other is, why is he running away? How does he think he could run away is one question. The other is, why is he running away? Which may be a deeper question. What's the problem? Hey, you're going to bring people back in tshuva. Not bad. It's great. It's great. One second. Don't answer yet. There's going to be a whole bunch of answers. So hold on. I'm just presenting the basic questions. And another question that's brought out here by the Malvi and the Radak, and we also mentioned it, since when do we go talk to the Goyim? And when do they put that in the Tanakh? Okay? Two parts of this. This book has nothing to do with Am Yisrael. Offhand. And then as an accessory to that question, of course, why do we read it on Yom Kippur? Right? In other words, it seems the least kashur to Am Yisrael. The people who do tshuva are goyim. Throughout this whole book, the only people who do tshuva are goyim. Even Yonah doesn't seem to be doing any tshuva in the book, by the way. Offhand, he doesn't see, right? At the end, he doesn't do tshuva. He argues with Hashem, and Hashem says something to him. What happens after Hashem says something to him? Hashem's the last word. What happens to Yonah himself? Not clear. Now, the goyim do tshuva. That's the whole book. Why are we reading that on Yom Kippur? Okay, that's all these things are built in. This is what the Parshanim also deal with. So let's go ahead. I want to say just on these questions, there's the answers of Perek Aleph and there are the answers of Perek Gimel Daled. Just like there are two halves, there are two answers. There's an answer that's flushed out from here and that the Parshanim bring here, but there are other answers that come on later in the book. So in a sense, the book is answering these questions throughout the book itself. Okay, and showing different shades of these answers, but these are the answers of Perek Aleph. Yes, Ezra, are you going to answer, or are you going to just wait to hear this, or you have something else? Let's go, sure.
I want to say one quick thing. I'm not sure if it's an answer or not, but one thing that I've been told is that if the prophet were to go tell the non-Jews to do shuvah, they'll do it right away and everything and all, and they'll actually listen, but the Jews, they wouldn't. And so that's one of the answers. Let's take a look at Rashi. Okay, Livrach Tashisha. Says Rashi,
Yam sheshmo Tarshish hu b'chutz la'aretz. It says the Tarshish is a sea. It's an ocean called Tarshish. Later, hopefully, we'll see where Tarshish is in the Tanakh, and it's in chutz la'aretz. Amar evrach li hayam she'ena shechina shora b'chutz la'aretz. So Rashi, as usually, brings us the garin. He doesn't marchiv.
Flush it out.
Marchiv.
Expand.
Right. He doesn't expand his explanation. He's very concise. Right. So he says, I want to go to Tarshish, go to the Yam, because there's no Shechina in Chutz La'aretz. Okay, so other people are going to develop that a little more. What that means, there's no Shechina in Chutz La'aretz. And Hashem says, you think you're running away, I'm jumping over this part. He says, I have lots of ways to bring you back, don't worry. You think you're running away. They bring you a mashal of an Eved who runs away from a Kohen in a Beit Kvarot. Right? It's a good shita. A slave of a Kohen runs away to the Beit Kvarot. He sits in the Beit Kvarot, and the Kohen can't get the Kohen. The Kohen says, I have other shitot to get you out of there. It's okay. That's what Hashem says. Umara Yonah, but here we go. Umara Yonah shelo ratza lelech el Ninveh. The bold letters in the third line. Umara Yonah shelo ratza lelech el Ninveh. Amar ha'akum kurovei tshuva hem. Im omar lehem ve'asu tshuva. Nimtzeti mechayevet Yisrael she'en shomim l'divrei hanevim. An astounding statement. What Ezra was saying, which is just absolutely, it blows your mind. It says the goyim are krovei tshuva hem. They're choser b'tshuva easily. The goyim. I'm going to go to them. They're going to choser b'tshuva. I'm sure of it. I know these goyim. They listen. They listen to prophets. They're affected by prophets. I'll go. They'll do tshuva, and then what will Am Yisrael look like relative to them?
They'll be looking like
horrible. We've been yelling at them for generations. The prophets, right? Yonah is after. We've been yelling at them for generations, and no, they haven't. Nothing's happened. It doesn't affect them. What?
Israel will be supplanted by them.
Not supplanted. It just makes them look horrible. That's what he says. It'll just make them look horrible. They do tshuva after I go to them, and Am Yisrael doesn't do tshuva. I'm not willing to make Am Yisrael look bad.
Yeah, but that's at the expense of them.
Chad mashmeit. Right. Yossi's saying, yeah, well, what about Ninveh?
It's a very ethical conundrum. Like clearly at Ninveh, it's not like something you can just abandon. But here he's saying, for the sake of Israel's pride, we should,
for the sake of Israel's, it's both pride and also how harsh Hashem will judge them.
Maybe
Hashem will judge them harsher, obviously, if other people are doing tshuva left and right, and only they aren't, they're going to be there.
They got inspiration to do tshuva greater when they see the goyim doing it.
That's not what Yonah seems to think.
Argue further
Right?
the point is that you would say, look, even the goyim can do teshuvah. This should be like a motivation.
That's what Nisim just said, right? That's not what Yonah thinks. In other words, it could have been the thought process. He says, "Oh, good, here's a chance. Let's go make the goyim." And then Am Yisrael, it's not what he does. I mean, obviously, we're asking the question why he's running away from this. So Yonah doesn't see that as a possibility. I believe Yossi, they've tried everything. The Nevi'im in Israel, Am Yisrael is remarkably stiff-necked into not listening to their what? Am Ksheirif. Tov. Now let's go on to just more of these kernels of things that Rashi flushes out that we'll see the other Parshanim develop afterwards. Ve'iten tzchara. If you notice, when he goes to the boat in Pasuk Gimel, right? He goes, Vayakom Yonah livroch Tarshisha milifnei Hashem, vayered Yafo, vayimtza onia ba'at Tarshish. It's just come from Tarshish. Ve'iten schara. What does that mean?
Paid.
He gave it
reward
or
wage, schar, fair, schara. So look what Rashi says here. Hikdim laset schara. Ve'en derech yodei hayam latet schar asfina ad shat hayitziah. He says, first of all, he gave it immediately. And people don't usually do it until the boat actually leaves. You don't give all your money. I mean, you're also dealing with sailors, right? Sailors are not always the most trustworthy people in the world. You keep some of the money. Maybe it's the end of the journey for that. He gives it all there. Velo od ela shenatan schar kula. He paid for the whole boat.
Yeah, I heard that.
This is a basic chazal. He paid for the whole boat, and this is one of the proofs
that he's a prophet.
That prophets, right? The Rambam says a prophet has to be chacham, Yibor ve'ashir.
Right.
And this is one of the proofs that you have to be ashir. Yonah paying for this whole boat. And we're going to talk about how big this boat is or what kind of boat we're talking about. Was this a rowboat? What kind of boat are we talking about? Okay, what are onyot tarshish? Onyot tarshish are massive things.
So,
We're going to see in a second.
I just-
One second. So, and Yonah pays for the whole boat. The other ones are going to develop it more. It's an interesting, the picture that's being made here is an interesting picture. Yonah goes down, and Yonah has lots and lots of money to do this. In other words, this wasn't just a chance encounter. Yonah comes prepared. He comes prepared. He comes prepared with lots and lots of money to pay off this guy to go on the boat. Yeah, Ezra.
So we see here that Yonah's rich and everything and all, and yet one of the Mephorshim say that who's Yonah? He was one of the kids that you had to bring back to life from an orphan, and that orphan was poor. How is that?
He was very good with stocks. I don't know what to say. He was rich.
I think first of all, see that his mother was one of the people she was.
He was poor then as a kid. He could have easily grown up and made money.
Yeah.
That she was she sustained.
Right. So she had stuff, but it wasn't the thing.
But it's interesting to what we just read on Shabbat. What happens to a prophet who's not rich?
Blessed
Right? He doesn't have so rich. What does he do? He goes and he tries to curse Israel.
Bilam was rich, actually.
What?
I'm pretty sure Bilam was rich.
Well, he wanted money. He always wanted more and more.
Right.
Good connections. Focus, everyone. Let's come back. Okay, so again, Rashi says, each ishel Elohav, min shivim umot shel akum ayusham. Rashi sort of says that when the goyim start yelling to their gods, Rashi says, just so you know, there were all 70 nations there. In other words, we're putting a picture here. This boat is a microcosmos of the world. Everyone was out there. There were at least 70 sailors, and they were each to an. Now, of course, were they actually? I don't know, but Rashi's trying to say an idea here that this ship is sort of like all umot haolam are there. All right. Again, as we go into the story and see what their story is, we'll see why that's relevant. Now, they say the chuvin apilagorot, right? The people there. Again, Rashi is trying to explain the pshat here. I'm skipping. Yeah, I'm skipping around. Thank you, Moshe. Let us cast lots. Now, and we'll find out whose fault it is. Now, what do you mean? There's a storm at sea. Why do you think it's anyone's fault? Like, there's storms at sea. Why do you assume immediately there's a fault? So here, they say, Rashi says, רואים היו שאר ספינות הולכות בים בשלום, ושלהם משתברת. אמרו בשביל אחד ממנו הוא. The Midrash says they looked right and the boats are going nicely. They looked left and the boats are going nicely. And they're shaking up and going. It's clear to them that they've been singled out here. This is a miraculous storm. This is not a regular storm. The other boats, everything is fine. They are being thrown and shook around. Something is going on. That leads them to understand that there is divine intervention here. Something's going on here that needs to be figured out. Okay? This is going to focus. What?
One city gets rain and the other cities.
Nachon. But I wanna add another thing, another point that we'll join later, but it's already important now. So we'll see that. Let's see. Yeah, the Radak. Okay. So the Radak, at the beginning of the Radak, and then we'll stop in the middle and jump in the Radak. This is the Radak brings just a very important quote from Chazal. So first of all, he says, "Ze Hanavi." If you see the Radak, the first Radak, "Vayidvar Adonai Yonah ben Amittai lemor." Ze Hanavi lo rainu nevuah ktuva lo, ela zo sheniba al Ninveh. אבל מצאנו לו נבואה, אבל לא נכתבה שכתוב בספר מלכים, הוא השיב את גבול ישראל מלבוא חמת, כדבר השם אלוהי ישראל אשר דיבר ביד עבדו יונה בן אמיתי הנביא. He says, we don't see any prophecy of Yonah, even though he's called a Navi. We just know that he gave a prophecy. So we don't have a quote of his prophecy. We know he gave a prophecy. Okay? ויש בדבר הזה מחלוקת בדברי רבותיי המוזר. אמרו, listen to this quote, יונה תבע כבוד הבן ולא תבע כבוד האב. רוצה לומר שחשש לכבוד ישראל, לפיכך ברח לחוץ אל הארץ, שאינה מקום נביאה, כדי שלא ישלחהו האל יתברך לנדבי, שידע שיהיו קרובי תשובה ויהיה בזה עונש לישראל. So he's quoting Rashi here, the previous Rashi that we saw of why he's running away, but he brings an interesting pasuk that's very important. Utava et kvod haben, velo tava et kvod ha'av. This is brought in the Ekshir of Chazal where they have different people who demanded one person's kavod and not another person's kavod. The Mashal Eliyahu Hanavi demanded Hashem's kavod and he didn't care about Am Yisrael's kavod. Yonah is the negative of that. Yonah is willing to run away from God, sort of throw God into the ocean in this sense, right? He's willing to get rid of God as long as it saves whose kavod? Am Yisrael's kavod. He's willing to X out a prophecy, which is unbelievable. As the Malbim is going to ask later, a prophet who doesn't say his prophecy has to die. Yeah, has to die. It's called Naviya Kovesh Nevuato. You're not allowed to do that. If you get a prophecy, you're chayav mita. You know, it's not so pashut. Yonah got this. Hashem told him to do something. He runs away. You're not. That's like one of the. There are a couple of things Navi can't do. A Navi can't say he was told in the name of Avodah Zarah. A Navi can't change a mitzvah. He can't do a couple of things a Navi can't do. One of the things he can't do is lichvosh nevuato, to capture, to hold in his prophecy. Naviim got a prophecy. You have to go tell it, and he's not telling it.
I always learned that was a physical thing. Like a Navi physically
can't. So that's okay. When the prophet says it's like fire in my bones, right? Eshbatz mutai, that I can't with stop it, right? Or Hashem Elohim diber bilo yenabeh. Hashem said something. Who can't prophesy? It's true, but in the halacha this exists. You know, this idea that it's the mamash in halacha. The Rambam brings it as one of the things.
Is this what we say for a defense of Yosef, why he shared his dreams? One of the points?
No.
Not necessarily.
No. I'm not sure dreams have the same level of prophecy.
Prophecy
he has a job. What?
Prophecy is usually given in dreams.
It's true, but Yonah wasn't. In Yosef, we don't see his dream. His dreams are prophetic as opposed to a prophecy.
Right. So the idea is that dreams can be interpreted and they give prophecy.
Right. But there's prophecy which is flat out clear. Hashem says, the Rambam says very clearly, the Ramchal talks about it, how when you get prophesized, you know you're prophesized. Okay, there's nothing to discuss.
Nothing dreamy
nothing dreamy about it. Good. Okay. So but this musag was important to see in the Radak, Tava et kvod haben. Yonah is willing to die for Am Yisrael. He's willing to die, to be over on a mitzvah that he has to do for Am Yisrael. He is a kanai, a zealot for Am Yisrael, which he gets from who? From Eliyahu Navi. He gets the zealousness from Eliyahu Navi. But Eliyahu's zealousness was hafuch. It was for Hashem. And he was saying, Am Yisrael, let them all die. I don't care. They feru breitecha. They went over your covenant. Take them away. It's mamash hafuch, okay? But it's the same power of kanaut. Tava et kvod. I demand the honor of, fill in the blank, Am Yisrael or Hashem. It's this parsha. What am I going to say? We're in the middle between Balak and Pinchas. It's like kanaut, right? Eliyahu, Pinchas, Eliyahu. So kanaut is very important. It's a very important midah. And Yonah is toveat kvod haben. So that's what he says. And now take a look at the bold. I'm going a couple lines down. Look at the bold here in the Radak. V'yesh lish'ol, lama nichdeva nevuah zo b'kitvei HaKodesh? וכולל ננבא שהייתה מאומות העולם, ואין בו זכר ישראל, ואין בכל נביאים זולתה כמוהו. He says, what in the world is this book doing in our Nevi'im? There's nothing like this in the Nevi'im. In all the books of the Nevi'im, he's talking about the Goyim. Why is this here? ונוכל לפרש, and we can explain, כי נכתבה להיות מוסר לישראל. The book was written to be musar. שהרי עם נוכרי, שאינם ישראל, היה קרוב לתשובה. ובפעם הראשונה שהוכיחם הנביא, שבו בתשובה שלמה מרעתם. בישראל מוכיחים אותם הנביאים השכם והערב, ואינם שווים מרשעם. This is sort of what Yossi and Nissim were trying to say before, but this is in the hekshare of why it's brought in the Tanakh, not at the time. Yonah doesn't see this at the time. He's saying, Chazal say, he gives, sorry, not Chazal, but the reason it's in the Kitvei HaKodesh is for you to look and say, oh, no one does tshuva. No one, they did. Someone did. Not only did someone do it, who did it? Goyim did it. Goyim did, exactly. So that it's a lekach, it's musar to Israel. Don't say it's impossible. Don't say it can't be done. Don't say no one's ever done it. Look, we have a book. So that's one idea. One second, he goes on. ועוד, להודיע הפלא הגדול שעשה האל יתברך עם נביא שהיה במי הדג ג' ימים וג' לילות וחי ועוד שהקיעו הדג. Right? There's a miracle. The story has a miracle, and the miracle has amazing Hashem's ability to keep the Navi alive. I'm putting that on the side. I don't want to go into this one. I don't think it's as important, but the next one is ועוד, ללמד שהאל יתברך חומל על בעלי תשובה מאיזה עם שיהיו ומוחל להם וכל שכן שהם רבים. This is an important לקח. Hashem has mercy on בעלי תשובה. Sorry. Okay, he has mercy on בעלי תשובה. מאיזה עם שיהיו. Doesn't matter which nation they're from. וכל שכן כשהם רבים. The power of a tzibur to do tshuva. What? The power of a tzibur to do tshuva is barur, even more so. So this is a lekach. Obviously, the Radak is pulling this to who? Why is that relevant?
Listen to us. Forever.
For Yom Kippur, right? This is we hear this on Yom Kippur. In other words, on Yom Kippur, this is a good lekach to have, right? Besides the musar part of you should do tshuva, it's also saying Hashem takes in anyone who does tshuva. It's a very important messer that anyone tshuva from whoever they are, wherever they're from, and vadai when they do it as a community, and you do it as a tzibur. All right, so that now we understand why it's here, or at least he gave an idea why the book of Yonah is in the thing. I feel a lot of times these questions are greater than the answers. The answer is an interesting answer, but the question still sort of stays there, right? This question is still, it's so unique, the book of Yonah, that it still raises some questions. Hopefully we'll see them over time. Tov. So the Radak says, Kum kral ninvei, pasuk bet, v'kara elea ki alta ra'atam lefanai. And he doesn't say what to yell, what he says. He doesn't say what ma'u koreh, right? Kum kral ninvei. So what does he likro el ninvei? What are you supposed to do? I don't know.
So one of the things we heard that the reason why he didn't give it to him is because Hashem knew he's going to run away, and you're not allowed to run away from what you're supposed to say.
Good, that's really good.
However, if you're told to go somewhere, then you haven't fully gotten your prophecy yet, and therefore, in a way,
what you're saying is what the Malbim says.
Any laws.
Ezra says the Malbim says, Mamash, that's the Malbim. You quoted the Malbim that in this case, Hashem just told him you have to go. He didn't say what to say. So it's not a kovesh nevuator. We said the problem of a prophet who holds in the prophecy. He didn't have a prophecy. He was said, go there and you'll call. I'll tell you later what to call. But that's not a prophecy. No, it's instructions, but it's not a prophecy per se, and therefore it's not. That's what the Malbim explains, that he's not a.
Like he's trying to be patur from
the. Right, from the halachic kovesh nevuato. It's not whatever. It seems obviously there's a problem. But the Malbim says the Radak doesn't agree with that. The Radak says he has to say exactly what it says in Perek Gimel, and Perek Gimel tells what he has to say. Just there it says, and here it doesn't say it. And we learn from here that Hashem has hashgacha on the goyim. He says this is an important thing. Hashem cares what's going on with the goyim, but He only cares about certain things. Look what He says. Where do we see Hashem mitarev about the goyim? 3 different cases, right? Where Hashem or maybe 4, where he gets into it. He gets into Dora Mabul, right? Sdom, Dora Migdal Bavel, possibly also. No, Egypt not so much. There he cares about Israel. We're talking about the Goyim.
Migdal Bavel was before Jewish people, so there wasn't no real.
Right, nachon.
Then you could say
so Sdom. So we have Sdom, and we have here Ninveh. There are obviously a lot of things that are kashur. And the big problem in both of them. What's the big problem? What's the sin?
Avodah zarah.
Mamash not avodah zarah. Robbery. Hamas. Right? Hamas. So he says, look at the second to line. The second, right? I'll continue from where in the second line, middle of the line. כי האל יתברך משגיח אף באומות העולם, כשתגדל רעתם בחמאס, וכן בדור המבול, ובאנשי סדום, כי מלאה ארץ חמאס, והחמאס מפסיד היישוב. והאל יתברך רוצה ביישוב העולם. Hashem wants the world to work. He wants the world to be a place.
What is Hamas?
Hamas is stealing, thievery.
Stealing, taking.
Yeah, it's also terrorists are good. It's taking what you shouldn't be taking. It's taking not through justice. Taking wives, taking women, taking possessions, taking land, whatever it is. It's thievery on the highest scales. Okay? והחמאס מפסיד היישוב, והאל יתברך רוצה ביישוב העולם, Hashem wants the world to be settled. אבל בשאר עבירות אינם חשובים לפניו שישגיח עליהם. He doesn't really care what they do, everything else. That doesn't care. It doesn't bother him that they do other things. אלא ישראל לבדם. There's the last line in Pasuk Bet. Only with Yisrael, he really cares what they do for everything. This is the Radak. Okay? כמו שאמר, רק אתכם ידעתי מכל משפחות האדמה. Hashem says, I only know you. Well, he knew others, but because he's interested in Yishuv HaOlam. When the world is not Miyushav, no good. Hashem doesn't like that.
But isn't it our tafkid to be Meyashiv, the Olam? That's including the Umot HaOlam?
Ken, that's what he's saying. The Umot HaOlam have a job to also Liyashiv et HaOlam, and if they don't, Hashem intervenes. Okay? Now here the Radak and the next one, and we have to move a little quicker here. We're going too slow as usual, but the Radak here brings the difference between to livroach milifnei Hashem and lifnei Hashem. So look what he says. Ve'ech haya, look in Pasuk Gimel. Ve'ech yeh yachol livroach. Ve'David amar ana mipanecha evrach. How can you run away from Hashem? Ela en milifnei kmo mipnei. You could say milifnei and mipnei. It's not the same thing, they say. The lamed changes everything. How could you run away from Hashem? Ela. milifnei Hashem haya choshev ki perush milifnei midavar shehu lifnei Hashem. He's not running away from Hashem, he's running away from what is in front of Hashem. And what is that? Vu ruach hanevuah. It's the spirit of prophecy. These are the classic thing. When you leave Eretz Yisrael, you will not have prophecy. How did Yechezkel have prophecy? How did Daniel have prophecy? For Am Yisrael, you could have prophecies, like Huzari explains, right? When it's for Am Yisrael or for Eretz Yisrael, you could have prophecy in Chutz La'aretz also. But Yonah, this isn't for Eretz Yisrael, right? It's for Nineveh. Once I leave Eretz Yisrael, I will not get any more prophecies. That's what he thinks. Going on. Now, the Malbim takes this another level, and he says, it's not the pshat of just leaving Chutz La'aretz. He's also leaving Chutz La'aretz on a boat full of sailors. And on a boat, on sailors. A Navi, to get prophecy, has to be Miyushav, has to be music, has to be happy, has to be calm. No calm. Right. He has to be in a place where he could do this. So the Malbim says Yonah thought on a boat. There's no way you get prophecy on a boat when you're shaking all the time. Again, whatever. But also with the chavura that he was in, the Malachim sailors, even then, were not considered the high society. Let's put it that way. Okay. Beseder. Let's finish up. Let's go on to the next page, okay? The Ibn Ezra, there's a little point there. So the Ibn Ezra, right before the Malbim, it's cut off a little, says Aleph Bet Ayin on top. It's Rabbi Avraham ben Ezra, the Ibn Ezra. He says something, I'm just say it outside for our time. He says something interesting if you want to see it in the middle of the book. He says Nineveh was a city, a God-fearing city in the past. They were really a God-fearing city. And they're off the derech. They went off the derech. If they wouldn't have been a God-fearing city at first, Hashem wouldn't care about them. I don't know. But he says, he continues and says, they didn't do Avodah Zarah. How do we know they didn't do Avodah Zarah? Because when they do tshuva, it doesn't say anything about breaking idols or doing anything with the idol. There's nothing about idolatry here. It's only about Hamas. It's only about stealing and fixing their ways. He says, Ibn Ezra says an interesting idea that the people in Nineveh were God-fearing. They were good people. And they sort of went off the derech, and Hashem wants to bring them back.
So how can they be not Noachites, God-fearing people, but not doing Avodah Zarah?
Well, they are Noachites. Well, in Mechael Avodah Zarah, it states that Noahide laws are optional nowadays.
What?
They're not.
Here in Israel, they have to do the 7 mitzvot b'nei Noach. That's here they have to. In Chutz La'aretz, I don't remember the deal of have to.
It says it's like they can accept them voluntarily, but they're not like Mechael in the same way that we are in our mitzvah. Like,
Sorry, why do we have to be Noahides in this? What's the question that why don't we Noahides and just
They're
not
saying-
Avodah Zarah?
My question is, what is Ninveh? If you're saying that they're not
No, they may have been
Still idols.
they may have been some kind of thing, but Avodah Zarah was not their thing. No,
if you're saying that they don't have idols, but they are God-fearing, then they can only be.
Maybe they don't have a court system. Maybe they eat a live animal.
I don't know. They could be something else. They were atheists. They were agnostics. I don't know what they were. They were something else. I'm not sure.
Court system, they eat like these other things.
You're not atheist and God-fearing. It doesn't work like that.
Okay, you're right. That doesn't work. That didn't work very well.
Well, you could be an atheist noide, I guess.
What?
You could be an atheist noide.
Oh.
Because what are the
There's
laws
no
to
such
acknowledge Hashem's
Yeah,
existence?
that's one.
Yes.
No, but there are
You have
6
to-
other
you have to
laws they may
acknowledge
not
there's
follow.
A singular almighty.
Let's bring it back to the Ibn Ezra here. The Ibn Ezra is just saying that Ninveh wasn't as bad as we play them out usually to be. They were actually more metukan than we think. They were better than we think. That's what he says, and that's why it's been sent to them. Yeah.
Nineveh was the capital of the Asherim.
Ah, okay.
Asherim were not the starving, shining Noahides of the.
They certainly don't turn out to be that way. Yeah. Right. No, you're saying that. So this is the other idea that that the Malbim is gonna bring in for what's the problem with Ashur. So let's take a look here at the Malbim.
Another thing about it is that Ashur is not on the coast. Like, I'm not entirely sure how the fish got there. And I guess it's on the.
No, he puts down the chof and then he walks there. Yeah, I don't think he spits them out.
It's like nowhere near this. Like,
He's found Turkey and he takes a right and he walks for whatever days he walks. It's not.
Gone down the Tigris, or I don't know.
I don't think so. I think he was on the chof of Yam HaTichon and the Mediterranean and he walks, or he takes a camel maybe, or a get, or an Uber. So the Malbim begins with a quote we saw last week, where he talks about all the different places in Chazal we know him from Yonah, and then he asks a bunch of questions, and he has some pretty good questions. If you're going to just read, we'll read the first. You see the Sheilot here. He presents the Sheilot very, very well. Lo matzanu, right? So here he just brings his questions. He brings them out. I'll read them just because he says them so nicely. Lo matzanu b'shum makom Sheilot. Right, the Malbim, the second source in the Malbim. Lo matzanu b'shum makom sheishlach Hashem navi mibnei Yisrael b'fratot she'elech el medina min ha'omot lachzir otam b'tshuva. That's what the Radak said. We never seen this. כי זה רק מיוחד לישראל. שחלה בהם השגחה אלוהית, כמו שנאמר חז"ל. ומקרא מפורש, כי העמים אשר תהורש אותם, אלה מעוננים ישמעו, ואתה לא כן. ומה נשתנה עניין ננבה ששלח אליהם את יונה? That's the first question. What in the world is going on here? Why is he sending him to the nations? Hashem says befirush that the nations have their own ways of prophecy, and we have prophets. Why is our prophet going there? ומדוע לא שמע יונה בקול השם? והיה לו לרוץ בשמחה, להשיב בני אדם מדרכם הרעה. וממה בכך בעינם בני ישראל? What's your problem? Go bring them back in tshuva. Okay, they're not Jews. So what? You're not fixing people? You're not helping people? What's your problem? ואיך עבר יונה על דברי השם לכבוש נבואתו? ונביא הכובש נבואתו חייב מיתה. We said, right? If you hold in the nevuah. And מדוע אמר וקרא ולא פירש לו מה יקרא. Okay? And that's what Ezra said before. But here we open up a whole new a perspective of Sefer Yonah, of why Yonah is not going to Ashur. Okay? And this is connected to what Ben just said. קום לך ננבה וקרא אליה, שישובו בתשובה, ולא היה שליחות בשביל ננבה. First of all, it's not for ננבה. This whole thing isn't for ננבה. כי לא מצאנו שישלח השם נביא מישראל להשיב את העכו בתשובה. באמת, there's never an inyan that Hashem sends to bring back the goyim to tshuva. So why is he going to Nineveh? What, it's for Yisrael?
Because he's trying to see if they're rightfully worth to rule over.
Well, not rule. Let's see one second.
Conquer.
כי לא דווקא השגחת השם לשלוח נביא רק בישראל. רק. So here's the answer. כי הייתה השגחה ננבא בשביל ישראל. אחר שאשור הוכן להיות שבט אפו של השם, לרדות בו את ישראל שנתחייבו למקום. רצה השם להשיבם בתשובה, כדי שיהיו מוכנים למלות גזירתו על ישראל. This is a shattering idea. In other words, Ashur, Hashem's sharpening them. He's sharpening the sword that he's about to use for Israel, to punish Israel. And he needs them to be sharp. He needs them to be okay. So he needs them to be chozer b'tshuva, so he doesn't destroy them. It's a sort of funny logic here. But Yonah has to go and make sure Ashur doesn't fall, because Ashur has a job. What's Ashur's job?
Conquer us.
To conquer us and punish us. Shevet Api, it's a famous parak in Yeshayahu, where Hashem gets mad at Ashur for not realizing that he's just the axe in the hand of Hashem, which is this whole other theological concept of why should he know that that's what he's doing, but let's not go in there at the moment. For our purposes, Yonah is going to further Hashem's plan. Hashem's plan is to punish Am Yisrael. Ashur has to do that. Now do we understand why Yonah runs away? Why?
Want Israel to be punished.
He's not willing to be an accomplice. He's not willing to be accomplice for murder.
But the obvious question is Mitzrayim.
See?
That the Mitzrayim was not sharpened. Mitzrayim was the worst place of all, we heard. And they were the ones who overruled us for the tremendous amount of time. In fact, when we first became a nation. If the idea is a nation has to be sharpened in order to have the merit, the zchut to rule over us, we haven't heard that elsewhere so far.
Yeah, but we didn't know that someone else needed to be destroyed. They helped Yosef. They were actually pretty good. Only later they become bad.
Okay, but why didn't Yosef realize that this was what Israel was going to go up into?
Why didn't Yosef realize it?
Yeah.
Well, when we learned Megillat Esther, we said that was the problem. There's a bikorat, there's a critique of Yosef in Megillat Esther. Megillat Esther shows the critique of him. Beseda. So this is a whole new direction. In other words, up until now we said he's running away because Israel won't look good. Now he's saying, if I go to Ashur is about to decimate Israel. By the way, as Ben said, the Assyrians were known to be super cruel. Really historically, like one of the worst. Worse than the Babylonians, worse than other nations that had. They were just really cruel. And it makes our question even tougher. They were really cruel, and they're going to exile the 10 tribes, right? That's the galut. That's what the galut. That's right now. That's what's going to happen. They are strengthening to be the nation that causes a lot of trouble for Am Yisrael. And Yonah says, Be'etzem, in this sense, Yonah says, not through me, or over my dead body, as we say, and that's really what he says. It's really what he says. He says it's sort of like what Moshe Rabbeinu says. If this is what you're doing, count me out. Right? He says the same. If this is what you're doing, I want out. This idea of a prophet saying, I am not willing to be an accomplice to this is a fascinating tofa'ah that we see.
Hashem didn't yell at Yonah when he started to run away and got angry and said, who made mankind, who made the blind, who made the deaf, and who made the hearing, and all that, did I now go? So...
Well, what do you think? That's what he says to Hashem. This is the Moshe. When Moshe says, I don't want to go.
Right.
Nachon. So here he has other ways to tell Yonah that he's not happy with him.
Treats Yonah with kids' gloves.
Kids' gloves, right. Sort of. So this is very important. And he also says, וגם כדי שלא יאמר המתלונן, למה תביט בוגדים תחריש כבלה רשע צדיק ממנו. רצה השם לראות שאשור יש לו זכות יותר מישראל, שהם שמעו לדברי הנביא ועשו תשובה בישראל, יקשו עורפה משמוע. He also says, if you would say, well, why is Ashur beating up Am Yisrael? They're also bad. Why is Ashur better than Israel? Well, this is why they're better than Israel. They did tshuva and we didn't do tshuva. And here, v'kasher yada Yonah ki mishlichut zeh titzmach hara Yisrael. When Yonah knew that from his shlichut, from his messenger, and evil will be called Israel, לכן חשב מחשבות, בל ילך בשליחות זה. He said, I'm not doing this. הוא בחר יותר לאבד את עצמו בים. He decided to commit suicide in the ocean. That then he should bring the evil to Am Yisrael. Now just think of this thought process. Without the depth of the whole story, just on the individual level. Look what he's saying. He's saying is a very powerful thing. In other words, Yonah is not willing to be an accomplice to something that God plans, that Hashem himself plans. Right? He's not saying Hashem is wrong. He says, I can't do this. I can't be. Could you imagine what that means? I mean, for us to think also how careful we have to be in Kvod Yisrael, and how how we talk about Am Yisrael, we think about Am Yisrael. Yonah is not willing to be part of Hashem's plan for evil befalling Am Yisrael. He's not willing to do that. And he explains, that's Yonah Tavat Kvod Ben. Okay, remember we said the Chazal that Yonah demanded the kavod of the son as opposed to the son of the father, right? So Israel, the son, Yonah, that he says, I'm not willing to do.
So we know when Shmuel went to anoint David, he went through all the brothers. We know when Natan went to Melech David to tell him that he made a mistake, Natan didn't know the whole story. Why do we think then that the prophet knows the whole story?
Right, Natan didn't know the whole story. Which one?
When he said, "You may build when you're going to build the temple."
Okay.
Two examples where the Navis don't know the whole future story. So now we're saying all of a sudden that here the Navi knows that Ashur is going to take over and know that they have to merit up. How come?
Well, first of all,
not how come, but does anybody discuss it?
No, I remember discussing this in the past. Politically, it makes sense. Ashur up and coming. They're a power in the north. They're definitely a danger to all the nations around, and he could read the political map. He could understand what's going on here. Tov, let's say there. The Malbim, and we're